Hi everybody, so I am about to post subscriber Sunday videos. For those of you who are not subscribers, what we do with subscriber Sunday is people can respond to a question box, their specific post-traumatic parenting questions, their questions about their trauma recovery, their questions about their journey, something they read that they want to understand better. And then over the week, as I have time, when I'm camera ready, I respond with my specific answer. This week's is about a tricky friend for a little kid, where sometimes the friend's nice, sometimes the friend's not nice, how to handle that situation. A lot about inner child work and understanding inner child work when parenting actual children, some stuff about body image, some stuff about disagreeing with a co-parent's parenting decisions and how to handle that, and some questions about trauma recovery and how that works in the brain. So I'm going to get to them. See you subscribers soon. Bad at pretend play. How can I improve this skill so I can attune with my kids? Okay, so here's a hidden advantage about being bad at pretend play. All you need to do if you want to engage in pretend play with your kids, because if you're bad at pretend play, just engage in a different form of play. Like if it's like nails on a chalkboard annoying, don't do it. But if it's just like, I'm not really very good at this, all you need to do is to be good at taking orders. Kids love correcting adults. They love ordering adults around. So if you're doing pretend play and your kid is the restaurant manager and you're the waitress, they will get such a kick out of you doing it wrong and them having to correct you for a change. So really have fun with, okay, I'm the waitress. What should I do now? Okay, wait, I don't know how to do that. Can you tell me exactly how to do that? Because kids love that, and that's the best way to enter into that transitional space of play without it feeling so effortful. Let them direct. Like I said, if you're bad at pretend play to the point where it drives you crazy, don't do it. If you're bad at pretend play and you want to get better, another interim step into it, besides taking the orders of your child, is to play a game that sets up the shared fantasy for you. For example, the game Pretty Pretty Princesses is a game where as you go around the board, you collect more and more jewelry, and that's how you win. There are games like Castle Panic where they're more of a cooperative game where it's you and the kid versus the game board, where it's this shared fantasy that we are attacking a castle and we are going to defeat the ogres and, and save the castle or whatever. There's Castle Panic Junior, which is also a cooperative game. So those cooperative games, Game Right has a few of those, can also allow you and the child to enter into a shared fantasy world, but the narrative responsibility of that world doesn't rely on you making anything up. The game does that heavy lifting. I think your question's very interesting. How will an emotionally disconnected marriage affect the children? I think the concern is not an emotionally disconnected marriage nearly as much as an emotionally disconnected marriage where everybody lies and pretends everything is fine. I think that an emotionally disconnected marriage where it's acknowledged to the children, like Daddy and I don't always see eye to eye. Sometimes Daddy and I have different friends and different interests. Yes, you did notice us having tense tones of voice, and we're going to discuss it, and we're going to come up with a plan for how we're going to handle this thing we disagree on. I think when you're like sniffling back tears because your husband said something sarcastic to you, and your kid says like, "Are you okay, Mom?" and you're like, "No, I'm not crying. I'm fine. I'm fine." That is harmful to kids. The emotional disconnect isn't the problem nearly as much as the attempt to hide it and pretend that everything is fine. And I think an emotionally disconnected marriage where each parent truly believes and tries to be an attuned, attached parent to the children and make space to have a close relationship with the children can work, as long as, like I said, we're not lying to the children, we're not in some ways gaslighting them out of their experience. If they ask, like, you and Dad don't always seem to get along, we're honest about it, right? And we're focused on, Dad and I don't always get along, but we do both love you very much. If you're trying to have a great, close, attuned, attached relationship to your children without ever playing their relationship to the other parent, making space for that relationship as well, I think it can work. Like I said, this is something that probably has to be navigated in couples therapy or in individual therapy if your partner won't go to couples therapy. This can be done. It just takes a lot of thought and mindfulness. This is really very challenging, and it's one I think that a lot of post-traumatic parents can relate to. When you have those family weekend extended visits, holidays, and different families have different standards about things like body boundaries, forcing a kid to give somebody a hug, forcing a kid to sit on somebody's lap, giving kids sugar, not giving kids sugar, respecting whatever your boundaries are, right? Families have these different opinions about things, and sometimes those opinions become the touchstones for much bigger conflict, right? It's not about the stop giving my kids cookies. It's about you've ignored my boundaries and poo-pooed my boundaries my entire life, and now you're giving my kid cookies, right? Very often it's not about that issue. Now, there are some issues that are very much about that issue, right? If it's about body boundaries, I do not force my kid to hug somebody. Do not force my kid to hug you or sit on your lap. Sometimes you're going to have some very firm, strong values about certain things. I think the first practical thing that's really important to do is to separate out what are your very deeply and firmly held values that are super important to you, and those are hills you're going to die on. Like, we respect my kids' body boundaries. We don't fat shame children. Whatever is like super important to you that are actually values. Then you have the things that irk you but aren't actually values. They're more about your own childhood than your children's childhood. Like, I already told you, not to give my kid more jelly beans, and then you ignored me as usual because you never listened to me. And that really has to do with your own childhood, which is extremely important and needs to be processed. And boundaries and family dynamics and family of origin stuff is not just in the past, right? It comes up and hits us in the future. That's why we're post-traumatic parents. So I'm not saying that that stuff's not important, but it's super important to separate out what are absolute values and what's really about my old historical stuff. Can eating disorders start off as a form of protest behavior? Absolutely. What eating disorders frequently are about is I have a sensation of being out of control. My food intake is the one thing I can, yes, control. So I am going to control that. And for humans, sometimes control is such a fundamental psychological need that it even cancels out our biological need for food. So it's one reason why someone might have an eating disorder, but you will see eating disorders and toxic family of origin dynamics going together very often, and very often it is indeed about I want to have my own control. Sometimes, as a corollary for that, is eating disorders can come from a place, especially orthorexia, which is the condition where I must eat right, and if I eat right I get a sense of satisfaction and success, but if I eat even one bite quote unquote wrong, or 1 calorie over, or I drink less than the exact amount of water, or run exactly the less amount of miles than I said, then I feel lousy. Very often that can also come from a desire to seek success in one arena in life. Like, maybe my family's not being very nice to me, but like my behaviors that I can control give me this sense of like peace and success, and I can do it. You know how people sometimes talk about eating and they say something like, or dieting, and they'll say like, the scale's not showing me love. When a scale's an inanimate object, it can't show you love. So sometimes it's about that. It's about seeking love from the scale because you don't get it anywhere else. Subscribers, this is a great question. How to protect and nurture one's inner child when feeling unsafe. So I think the question that as the safe adult that our inner child needs to ask first is, am I feeling unsafe or am I actually unsafe? Because if you're actually unsafe, then you need to take steps to restore your actual safety. So if you're living with a spouse who gets violent, if you're in an unsafe situation at work, emotionally unsafe, you need to take steps to make it more safe, to protect yourself, because your inner child might not be exaggerating, it might be right. If your inner child is feeling unsafe, but it actually is safe, then you need to remind it that you are the one it's been waiting for, to paraphrase Dick Schwartz, and to remind it that is a way of restoring a sense of safety, that sometimes we have to be bravely uncomfortable while we're restoring our safety, but that you've got it. You, the adult, are in charge. The inner child doesn't have to protect. Really, really, really short answer, no. Shorter answer, not a great idea. Slightly longer and more nuanced answer, sometimes we don't have a choice, right? Like our PTSD is rearing its ugly head, it's interfering, it wants to be heard, and we have kids, and we have stress in our lives. Maybe we have conflict in our relationship. Maybe we have conflict at work. And we just don't have time to go to a 2-year retreat and address our PTSD because like there's children who need us, there's a boss who needs us, there's a spouse who needs us, there's like a mortgage to pay. And PTSD is like, hi, I'm here, don't forget about me. I think there are certain forms of psychotherapy that are better at addressing PTSD and then sort of putting it back in a box till next time. The therapies I like for that are IFS, internal family systems, and a very skilled EMDR practitioner who knows how to put things back in a container. Psychodynamic psychotherapy, very, very, very valuable, not for this kind of situation. It takes too long, it's too intense, it can leave you drained. Prolonged exposure, incredibly effective psychotherapy for PTSD. It's very aversive, it's very draining, doesn't fit neatly into a container. I wouldn't do it if there's other ongoing stressors. Honestly, I like to do prolonged exposure in inpatient or retreat level settings, not in a setting where the person goes right back to their real life, unless they don't have a lot of stressors in their ongoing life. Other forms of psychotherapy, you know, those supportive psychotherapies, talk therapies, they can be helpful. I don't know that you want to talk about intense PTSD stuff and trigger PTSD symptomatology while there are other stressors going on. So you might want to work more on containing or managing symptoms than real exploration and evoking of symptoms, if that makes sense. So how do you parent a teen who is very sensitive, who reacts strongly to criticism, even justified, helpful criticism that you're giving her because you're really trying to help her or give her feedback or give her information, but even that really innocuous suggestion gets shot down, gets shouted down. She just constantly feels like you're criticizing her. So I think what we do is we name the problem. So I might have what I call it is a talk about talks. Let's talk about how we talk to each other. Let's have a conversation where we talk about the fact that sometimes I want to give you feedback and then it feels threatening. So the first thing I would do is have talks about talks, conversations about conversations. Sometimes I might want to give you some feedback. And when I give you that feedback, it's going to feel a little stressful. It's going to feel a little bit as though I'm criticizing you or I'm telling you what to do. And really, it's just feedback. Can we talk about our talking style? How can we handle it when I want to tell you something, but when I say it, it starts feeling like I'm attacking you or I'm saying mean things about you? In other words, this is not that you have a problem. It's our interaction style that we have to figure out. Is there a way we could have a conversation about some of the deep stuff, the big stuff, the important stuff? Is there some way we could do that and we'll keep the conversation happy and friendly and civil because I love you and you love me, and let's remember. Sometimes the way to have these conversations is to go somewhere where it's more set up to have them, like go to an ice cream store, go to a coffee shop, someplace where it's fun, it's a treat, it's something good, and like maybe set it up like a weekly ice cream date where once a week we're going to go out for ice cream and we're going to talk about one thing, one feedback topic, one difficult conversation. When we're done the conversation, we're going to stop and then we're going to have our ice cream, or we'll discuss it in the car, and we can go in and have our ice cream once we finish the conversation, depending on how she feels about talking about things like this in public. If she's super self-conscious, she might not want to talk in the ice cream store. So we'll have the conversation in the car. As soon as we're done the conversation and like, okay, we're full enough with big emotions, we move in. And then, so we start with just the talks about talks.